All right, so now in this video, we're going to move on to the next section, which is factoring trinomial, which then means three terms, and a quadratic. So a quadratic trinomial. Quadratic means we have a highest degree of 2, so our highest power is 2. Right, so we kind of already went over these a little bit. And remember, you may have learned multiple methods or different methods. I'm only going to teach this one. So if you know how to do it another way, by all means, you can keep doing that. I just think this way is just beneficial because it works every single time. Some of the other methods that I've seen people using, it's harder if the number in front of this x squared is something other than 1. So it just makes it a little bit more challenging. But remember, we draw our x. And then we write multiplication sign here and circle it, and the addition sign here and circle it. Right? Then we multiply the number in front of the x squared, or the highest degree, so 1 times 12, and that goes to our multiplication part. And then the middle number, this drops straight down, so it's minus 7. Now we're looking for numbers that multiply to 12 and add up to negative 7. So since they're adding up to a negative number and they're multiplying to a positive, we know that means that they both have to be negative. Because the only way that two numbers can add up to be negative and multiply to positive if they're both negative. Numbers that multiply to 12 and add up to 7 are 4 and 3. Right now, remember our last step that we have to do is we had to divide by the number that was in front of our x squared. So we're dividing by 1 in this case. And then we use the song by Drake. We started from the bottom, so then we know it's 1x. And now we're here, so 1x minus 4. We started from the bottom, so 1x. And now the whole class here, minus 3. Right? You do not have to write the ones. You could just write x minus 4 times x minus 3, and that is our final answer. It's the only answer, and if we multiply it together, we will get back to our original problem. So you can always check your work if you have time by multiplying. All right, so I want to go through this one with you guys as well, because remember, the very first thing that we always look for whenever we're factoring is our GCF. Right? We always look for that first. And then after when we're looking for that, we can identify then how many terms we have, which then can help determine what method we're going to use, whether the X method or if they're shortcuts. But one of the things I never talked about yet was the sign in front of this x squared. This sign has to be positive. And when we write this, we want to write it so our powers are in descending order, meaning we will start with the negative x squared. Then our next number will be 4x. And then our last number will be that plus 77. So we always want to write it in this order with our x squared first. And then remember, the first thing that we want to look for is our GCF. And we have to have a positive x squared. That means we need to change this from negative to positive. And the way that we do that is we can factor out that negative sign, which means we need to factor out a negative 1. And then we divide each number by that negative 1. So in this case, normally we never factor out as our GCF of 1 because it doesn't change the problem. But since this has a negative sign in front of it, we need to factor out a negative 1. So that way we can have it in the form that we want it in. So that would be a positive x squared minus 4x minus 77. All right, so it's very important that when you're factoring, that x squared has to be positive. So if it's not, then you might need to factor out that negative 1. And now that we have it like this, we will draw our x. Now the number in front of that x squared is this positive 1. So we will then multiply 1 times negative. So we put our multiplication and our addition. We do 1 times negative 77, which is a negative 77. And this middle number, this drops, so it's minus 4. All right? Then we look for numbers that multiply to negative 77 and add up to negative 4. So since they're multiplying to a negative number, I know 1 is negative and 1 is positive. And factors of 77 that have a difference of 4 are 11 and 7. Since this sign here is negative, the larger number has to be negative. And you can check your work by add these two together. Negative 11 plus 7 is negative 4. If you try to say negative 7 and positive 11, that would equal to positive 4, which is not what we have. Now remember, we divide by the number in front of our x squared, so we divide each case by 1. So then our factored form, we started from the bottom, and now we're here. So then that will give me 1x. You don't have to write the 1, you could just write x, but 1x minus 11. We started from the bottom, now the whole team here, so that would then be 1x plus 7. All right, now the one thing that you absolutely cannot forget in order to have the correct problem is we factored out this negative 1, and you must write that at the end. So it's actually negative 1 times x minus 11 times x plus 7. So this is your final answer. If you forget that -1, it is incorrect. All right, now the last problem in this video I want to go through with you is similar to what we just did before, but slightly different. Remember, the very first thing that we look for when we're factoring is our GCF. We have 3, we have 6, and we have 72. All numbers are divisible by 3. So the first thing we are going to do is factor out that 3. So we're essentially dividing each term by 3. This will then give me x squared plus 2x minus 24. Right, then we're going to go ahead and factor this out. So we will draw our x, we'll put the multiplication sign and then the addition sign. We will then multiply the number in front of our x squared, 1 and -24, so it gives me -24. The middle number drops, so it's +2. Numbers that multiply to -24 and add to 2. So first off, since this is negative, we know we have to have a minus and a plus sign. And then factors of 24 that have a difference of 2 are 6 and 4. Now, since this number is positive, the larger number has to be positive. So it's +6 and -4. Check your work by multiplying, making sure it's -24. Add them, making sure it's +2. Then we need to divide by that number in front of the x squared. So we divide each one by 1. And now we started from the bottom. Now we're here. So that gives me 1x minus 4. We started from the bottom. Now the whole class here. So 1x plus 6. And we cannot forget our GCF. So that 3 needs to go out front. And that is our final answer. All right, and that is it for this video.